There's a reason the Fortnite competitive community keeps talking about these two names, Clix and Higs. This duo feels inevitable. Clix has been one of the most mechanically gifted players since the Fortnite OG days, the kind of player who can win fights that seem unwinnable. Higgs has had the opposite path. Fortnite didn't come as easily. He had to earn every single placement and every ounce of respect. Two completely different paths, two completely different starts, and somehow they've ended up together. So today I'm breaking down the story of how Clix and Higgs evolved into the players they are now and why this pairing doesn't just work, but how they might win the next FNCS. Clix's story starts with an instant success because in 2019 he qualified for the Fortnite World Cup 5 separate times. He wasn't just competing, he was already on the biggest stage in the game at just 14 years old. He placed 18th in the World Cup solos and 35th in the duos with Skeptic, earning over 6 figures and immediately becoming one of the most recognizable faces in competitive Fortnite. From an outside perspective, it looked like a perfect start, but the cracks were already there. Despite strong placements and insane mechanics, Clix struggled with something way harder to fix than his aim: stability. The chemistry between his duos at the time just weren't quite there. From 2019 to 2021, his teams constantly changed. New trios, new duos, and new plans every season. And the results started to reflect that. We saw him play with Skeptic in the World Cup and then moved on to players like Kanata, Young Calc, Bizzle, Illist, Booga. Even with legendary names, nothing quite stuck. Great heat performances, Cash Cup wins, but in grand finals when he would qualify, he was inconsistent. He was a part of what everyone at the time considered to be the trio to beat: Booga, Bizzle, and Clix. They ended up placing 5th in their first FNCS together back in Chapter 2, Season 5. But the next season, they didn't even qualify for the grand finals. The community was surprised at how badly they performed together, but a lot of it came from Clix's community being toxic towards Bizzle and getting into his head, making it harder for them to compete with the right mindset. This caused the trio to break up after just 2 seasons. His next trio for FNCS was in Chapter 2, Season 7 with Bucky and Creo, who placed top 3 in the qualifiers, sending them straight to Grands. Everything was looking great for them until they had to deal with the stress of getting contested at Steamy Stacks by Bully's trio, one of the biggest rivalries during that era. Egos took over and Clix would finish that FNCS in last place, his worst placement ever. This moment really summed up that era for Clix. Everyone could see the talent, and Clix often would place well in solos, but didn't perform as well in team-based tournaments. Something had to change. Throughout 2022 and 2023, Clix started to shift his mindset. He stopped chasing perfect teammates and started committing to long-term growth. He would end up with Day during this time. There was a lot of hype for the duo to do well. They initially placed 7th in the first FNCS of Chapter 3, but the very next season their momentum wavered when they ended up in 35th place. Clix swapped his teammate to Dukes for Season 3 and gets 4th place, which might have been the start of the 4th place curse, but we'll talk more about that as we go on. He didn't do too great in the FNCS Invitational, coming in 15th, but he did end up getting a victory royale on LAN, which was a massive accomplishment. 2023 started the Clix and Scented duo arc, and there was a bit of controversy with this duo forming, and it wouldn't stop there. They were seen as a really promising team to win it all in Chapter 4 Season 2, but in April, Clix ends up getting banned from competitive. During a solo victory Cash Cup, Clix had a suspicion that he was being stream sniped, so he called out the stream sniper and told him to give him loot or else he would get banned. Clix was trying to prove that he was being stream sniped, but Epic took it as colluding since he did get a slight advantage when trying to prove his point. He got hit extremely hard and was not able to compete in that season's FNCS because of the ban, forcing him to step away and reevaluate everything. He comes back though for Chapter 4 Season 3 and teams up with 6-time FNCS winner Epic Whale. Clix starts trusting the people around him and letting them call the shots, working more in sync as a duo instead of just a great solo player. He also made a major announcement during this time and announced that he was a co-owner of XSET. He then proceeds to Copenhagen for Globals, where the pressure couldn't have been higher. To make finals on day 3, he needed a top 25 finish in the lower bracket on day 2. One interesting detail from Copenhagen is that Higgs and Clix were actually splitting their drop spot at Mega City. Higgs, playing with Rapid, capitalized on their side of Mega City and secured a top 5 finish on day 2. And even though the zones consistently pulled in their favor, they struggled with Surge. In the end, there were no excuses, and Clix chalked it up to a bad performance. When all was said and done, they missed the qualification by just 4 points. The number 4 continues to haunt him going into Chapter 5, because in Majors 1 and 2, Clix and Epic Whale placed 4th and 14th place, meaning Season 3 was their last opportunity to qualify for Globals. After the 14th place finish, it seemed like Clix was determined to win Major 3 with Epic Whale. Clix even said that Epic Whale was his favorite duo he had ever played with. But looking back at their performance, Clix realized that their playstyle doesn't work well together, and he felt like he would be better off with a different duo. It was clear that Clix could have had a top 10 finish with Epic Whale, but Clix wanted to win. Once again, people started speculating about who he would team up with. Since Clix was more of a fighter, he wanted a more experienced IGL that could also keep up with his more aggressive playstyle. Then, one of EU's biggest players announced that he was moving to NA to compete for a spot in Globals. Clix and Veno became a top contender for Major 3. Veno and Clix ended up getting 4th place in Chapter 5 Season 3 Finals, which makes it so that they qualify to LAN. Then together they got 11th place at the FNCS Global Championship with 444 points. Again, he could not get away from that number 4. But he was still getting better as time went on, because going into 2025, the FNCS format went from duos to trios. Alongside Iyamzo, this was the first time we saw Clix team up with Higgs, Batman Booga at the time. After a generational run from Peterbot in Chapter 5, this trio was primed to take him down. They worked extremely hard and they were set up to win. And they were honestly such a solid trio. They managed a 3rd place in the Chapter 6 Major 1 Finals. And with that momentum of a top 3 finish, Chapter 6 Season 2 looked like it was theirs for the taking, until the Chug Splash incident.
Give me up. Chug me. Guys.
Oh my god, I'm big concept.
No! He pulled out the big punch! He choked!
This left them in 2nd place behind none other than Peterbot. When things went wrong, Clix had a hard time bringing himself out of a negative mindset, and we kind of saw that with the results of the next few FNCS tournaments. In Chapter 6 Season 3, they came in 8th place, and then in the 2025 Global FNCS Championship, they came in 18th. But Clix has been working with a Fortnite coach and a mental coach on top of that, which has been really helpful with his performance while competing. He's currently a favorite with Higgs to win FNCS this year. Peterbot even returned to comp and has said that he's back to make sure Clix doesn't win.
I was playing without today, bro. What? They're not calling Saudi either way.
This version of Clix isn't trying to prove that he's good anymore. He already knows that he is. Higgs' story is the complete opposite. Most OGs will remember him as Batman Booga, but for the sake of the story, we're going to call him Higgs. He competed in his first tournament, the Trio One Day Cup in 2019, but finished in 1,729th place. He competed all year long and even competed in the World Cup solos and duos, but barely placed in week 7 and ended up getting his very first earnings, $100. He admits that very early on, he's not naturally talented, but he keeps grinding. All of 2020 goes by with almost no earnings. He was competing all year long, but wasn't placing high enough to earn. Until late that year when things finally started to click. During the $1 million Super Cup, he places 50th place and earns $425 in November. Once December rolls around, he plays in the Frosty Frenzy tournament. He plays both sessions on day 1 and earns $400 both times, totaling almost $1,000 in just a single day. 2021 kind of starts off the same way, another half year of competing but ended up empty-handed. But then Higgs ends up qualifying for his very first FNCS Grand Finals. He comes 25th place and earns $500. Not a win, but proof that he's improving. He starts placing higher in tournaments and qualifies for the FNCS All-Star Showdown. With 90 players invited to the tournament, only 10 spots were up for grabs from a single qualifier. He earned his spot placing in 3rd and wound up 7th overall on West, getting him his biggest payday so far, earning $11,000. This event was one of the first ones that helped Higgs gain recognition in the comp scene. In Chapter 2 Season 8, he stayed consistent, earning 4th place in FNCS, but similar to Clix, he continued to swap his teammates around and suffered a big fall off during the FNCS Grand Royale. 2022 comes and he ends up joining 2AM Esports. As I mentioned earlier, Chapter 3 is when tournaments changed from trios to duos. So Higgs started competing with Wheels in multiple cash cups, tournaments, and scrims. They kept up the consistency, but they had a hard time breaking into the top 10. After that, Higgs starts playing with Caleb for Chapter 3, Season 3, and they were able to finish in the top 10 for FNCS. They got 9th, earning $3,000. But they don't end up getting invited to the FNCS Invitational LAN despite their strong placement. This was a big turning point for Higgs. He decides to hire a coach and starts taking competitive Fortnite more seriously, and his dedication pays off because him and Caleb end up finishing 5th in Major 1 Grands with a high placement throughout the season. Then NA West and NA East merge into NA Central. At first, Higgs played with Bacon for Major 2 and they finished 38th. But for the next season, he teams up with Rapid and they clutch a top 10 finish in 8th place, securing their spot in the FNCS Global Championship LAN for 2023. By the time that Higgs goes to LAN in Copenhagen, he's no longer the underdog. It's his first time under the spotlight at LAN, going up against the best of the best. Even with a strong day 2, splitting his drop spot at Mega City with Clix, he finishes 14th overall. But 2024 is when we really start to see Higgs improve. In Chapter 5, Season 3, he comes in 2nd place in the FNCS with Rapid, only losing to Peterbot. And this was a crazy tournament run for Peterbot, so getting 2nd place is still a huge achievement. They ended up coming in 9th in the FNCS Global Championship, which was an improvement from 14th the year before. But the end of 2024 is when Rapid and Higgs split as a duo, and Fortnite announced that competitive is returning back to a trio format. So in February 2025, he changes his name to 2AM Higgs, and this is when we start seeing him rebranding from Batman Booga to Higgs. His new trio is now himself, Iyamzo, and Clix. A very experienced trio, but not a single FNCS win between them. On the bright side, they did help Clix finally beat his curse of the number 4 by coming in 3rd place in the FNCS at the beginning of Chapter 6. They continued to place well in Cash Cups during the season and stayed dominant with multiple 1st and 2nd places in the Trio FNCS Divisional Cups. They were neck and neck with Peterbot's trio, but then the dreaded moment happened. There was a crucial moment where Higgs accidentally pops a big pot instead of chug splashing, which could have saved the team, and that ended up costing them the FNCS. There was heavy blame put on Higgs by the community, and this was probably one of the biggest mistakes of Higgs' entire career so far. Rumors started to spiral that he was going to get dropped from the trio over it. It was such a viral mistake that even to this day, people still troll him with the audio of a chug splash.
How much heals is that?
Run! Oh, no, not the chug! No! No!
Chug me!
I decided to print out a picture of a chug splash, which is the reason that he lost FNCS. And while he was live on stream, I got into disguise and put it into his background.
Okay, alright. It's literally just a picture of a chug spot.
But in April 2025, he announces that he has joined XSET. He doubles down on discipline. The rebrand was official, and over all socials, he was formerly known as Higgs. The trio continued on, and week 2 of the FNCS Divisional Cup was looking promising as they came in 2nd. But in the grand finals of Chapter 6 Season 3, they ended up finishing in 8th place. For Chapter 7, Epic announced that the tournament format was going back to duos, which is when we saw Iyamzo leave the trio and duo with Josh Riley, and Higgs and Clix decide to stay together. Since Chapter 7 started, Higgs has won Solo Cash Cup, lots of duo victory Cash Cups with Clix, evaluation cups, and FNCS Divisional Cups, and much more. In December 2025, he ends up moving in with Clix, and their placements speak for themselves, constantly winning or placing top 3 in each tournament that they play together, proving he's one of the best players in Fortnite right now. This is where everything connects. Clix and Higgs both have a history of swapping teammates every year, but they've stuck together since 2025. The first is the chemistry and strong vibes that they have together. A lot of pros will play together only because they do well, but they don't actually like each other. But between Clix and Higgs, there are no ego clashes. They both have clear roles and they play off of each other well. Their individual mentalities and mechanics also work well together. Clix brings confidence, firepower, and game presence, and Higgs brings stability, discipline, and smart decision making under pressure. Their drop spot is really strong at Wonkyland, and they can play zone for a long time with so many extra heals at the POI. There's a lot of mobility around this area, so they don't need to use the wingsuits since they have launch pads and the Ferris wheel to play with. There are even rumors of snipers coming back to competitive, and we all know Clix is absolutely deadly with a sniper like we saw in Chapter 5. Some duos are one-dimensional and rely on high ground to place well, but they're a flexible team that can play either low ground or high ground. We also have to give a lot of credit to their coaches. BloodX holds a lot of craziness together. He primarily coaches on a harder region in EU, but that translates over to NA really well. BloodX helps harness their talents and refines them versus relying purely on raw talent. Players like Josh Riley is raw talent. If he worked with a coach, he would be unstoppable. But they don't just depend on fighting power. Both work with a mental coach as well, which helps them stay calm under pressure. They both stream and perform in front of a lot of people during major tournaments, which can really get the best of you. Making sure their mentality stays strong gives them the huge advantage when it comes to competing. There isn't an FNCS Grand Finals this season, but the tournaments we've seen so far have made one thing clear. This team is ready to prove how good they really are. Even with Peterbot fully embracing the villain role and landing directly on Clix and Higgs, they held their ground and still finished second place in their first Session 3 of FNCS. And if they keep it up, we might just be watching the best rivalry Fortnite has seen in years. Because it didn't start this season. It goes all the way back to FNCS Major 2 and 3 last year when Clix was the one landing on Peterbot, only for it to come full circle now in Chapter 7 Season 1. Clix and Higgs met each other at the exact right time. One learned discipline, the other learned confidence, and now they're chasing the same thing, a championship that feels overdue. This isn't a duo that people want to win. It's a duo that finally looks ready to win.